people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Welcome to the Measure Success podcast, where we feature top leaders on how they measure success in their business and life. Now, let's learn from their experiences.
Carl J. Cox here, host of the Measure Success podcast, where I talk with top leaders about effective strategies that inspire success. I'm super excited about our guest today, but first of all, a shout out to Ian Peterman. That guy is a stud. If you didn't see him on our recent podcast, he's recommended our guest today, who is Jason Cutter. Jason is truly a recognized thought leader, 4X author, international speaker focused on creating scalable sales teams full of authentic persuaders. And that's with the trademark, by the way. That's not just your ordinary thing. So good job with that. His foundational book, Selling with Authentic Persuasion, transformed from order taker to quota breaker, provides salespeople and leaders with a guidepost for shifting sales from gross to professional people who you want to be a part of. Jason, welcome to the Measure Success podcast. I can't wait for the show today.
Thanks, Carl. I'm super excited based on our conversations before we even hit record. We're going to have some fun and we're going to run out of time. Those are the two things I know.
Yeah, exactly. So we're going to just hit right in. And I love what we talked about when we were prepping about this is selling to humans. Here we are today. Everything's AI. And you're like, no, it's H to H. Help us with that. What does that mean? And why is that important today?
Well, it stems from conversations I had for years where companies would come to me and be like, well, what do you know about selling this? Or you come from B2C, what do you know about selling, to businesses and that? And then what I really realized was it's not B2C, it's not B2B, it's not D2D, direct to door to door. It's none of that. It's H to H, it's human to human. And the fundamental problem, it's really a problem, is that companies, sales teams, salespeople, they know their product, right? They learn their product. A salesperson goes and works at a company who thinks they're amazing and they're the hero of the story, and the company is created on the fundamentals of solving problems or saving the day or alleviating pain, right? Like nobody starts a company because, hey, let's just be mediocre and average and maybe, make some money every once in a while. Like companies are founded by people who think they're amazing. And then they have salespeople who think they're amazing and they teach them about their product and they say, here's our product. We're amazing. Here's the brochure. Here's here's a cup of Kool-Aid, drink this. Now go out in the world and tell people about the product until they buy it, right? And overcome objections. So everyone I've met, they know their product. They know how to explain it. They just don't understand people. And that's the problem, is sales is generally seen as this thing that, hey, if I just know how to talk to people and I know what I'm talking about, I should be successful in sales. And it's shifted so much. So much of that has changed. And there's lots of reasons why that doesn't work anymore.
So let's start diving into that, because I'm super curious about that. I mean, things have been changing. They've been changing quietly for the past decade. I mean, you could just say the phone that I'm waving up right now for those who are watching, right? That by itself has been a significant change compared to where it used to be. But what other factors have really changed the way from the human emotion, human behavior side that is completely different to how perhaps we were selling 10 years ago?
And this is what is really the fundamental start to a lot of the training that I do and sessions that I do with teams, is help them understand is this one statement, this cliche is very true. Knowledge is power. Okay. So you and I, guessing relative ages of you and I, remember a time when if you wanted to buy something, if you wanted to find out information about something, you had to call a company or go to a company, go to the store and go through the gauntlet of what a salesperson wants to put you through, right? If you wanted to buy a car, you could wait for the Sunday paper or a magazine about it. But generally, like if you want to know the price, then you had to deal with that. And the thing is, and the truth of it all is that knowledge is power. And not too long ago, all of the knowledge rested with organizations, companies, and salespeople, right? They had the knowledge, they had the information, and you were basically the one who needed it from them, which meant they had all the power. Right. And so they could wield that. And again, like, think about it. Like when I was a kid, you didn't like what they were saying, or you didn't like their options of cars or their price. The option, what? Drive down the road, drive to the next city, go somewhere else. It's not like now where literally, like my wife and I bought a car recently, and we literally went to CarMax's site, ordered it from another state, had it shipped, showed up, test drove it. We brought our own financing. We liked it. Some guy helped us with paperwork, and that was it. Like, I knew what I was buying. I didn't need him to explain anything about the car. And so the balance of power has shifted, that because of the internet, not just mobile phones, but because of the internet, everyone has the same knowledge and information, which means customers don't need salespeople for knowledge and information. But that's still what salespeople are. That's like their fundamental go-to.
So that is super interesting, right? Because that concept of that, we, once again, that's where our power has gone away from a salesperson perspective. So what do you do next as a salesperson when you don't have that power?
Well, so then what you have to do is you have to realize what your job really is, and you have to shift from thinking you're the hero of the story. Like, this is the fundamental truth is, most people go into it thinking they're the hero, and I won't go into all the details of it. But just, we as humans, we always think we're the hero of the story. We always think we're the center of the universe. We all do. It's the part of the human condition, right? Like, nobody thinks they're...
Wait, Jason, you're not part of the center of the universe?
No, I absolutely am. I am an only child. So I'm not only just the human who's defaulted to, self-centered. I'm also an only child. So people who know me know that, sometimes if I'm not careful, I could be even more self-centered. But like, nobody's thinking they're just playing a part in somebody else's story, right? We think everyone is playing a part in our story, and it's just how it goes. The problem is that salespeople take that to the next level, thinking I'm selling something amazing. My company told me I'm amazing, and I'm a human, which means I'm definitely here to save the day. And the customer is not going to work well with that because they think they're the hero of their own story. And so what they're looking for is guidance. Instead of wisdom, or instead of knowledge and information, they want wisdom. They want guidance. They want to know, here's my situation. I want you to tell me what's the right choice. Because I know, thanks to the internet, I have unlimited choice. I can order anything. I can get anything. If I'm talking to you, it's because I need help with the right choice. In the same way, like, and sometimes people dispute this, but think about what you do, whoever's watching or listening to this. If you don't think this is correct, think about yourself on Amazon, because that's now pretty universal. Like, everyone has experience on like an Amazon type platform, or even eBay or something like that. You search for something that you're looking for in a new category. Okay. Then you find some products. Then you immediately scroll to the bottom to see what people said about it. You want to know, is this the safe, smart choice? Did other people do well with it? Is this the right choice for me? And does that mitigate the risk, right? Not just, I'm going to buy this and see what happens. I just want to make sure it's the right choice. And then I will decide from there.
I really like it, once again, of how, it comes down to helping with wisdom of choice. And I've found actually often, especially in B2B sales, that it's much more of, you're trying to reduce the risk of the buyer. There's that classic saying, and here I am in the strategic planning consulting world, where the joke has been for years, nobody's ever gotten fired who's hired McKinsey, which is basically a true statement. The problem is this: McKinsey only implements 20% of the things that people are willing to pay. And typically they say, working with those larger firms, it's about a 500K just walking in and talking with them at the door. This is crazy, right? So think about that. People are willing to spend $500,000 just to talk to a firm that has really smart people. You won't get fired over it, and only 20% of what they do gets done, which is just crazy. So how do you help? How do we go through that process of removing the fear and risk so somebody does want to buy your product or service?
Here's the biggest thing, and this is the part that usually sparks some giant light bulbs with people. It's partly the hero and the guide and the wisdom part versus the knowledge and information. The other one is that universally, every potential customer that you have, every lead, every prospect, whatever you feel like calling them for your industry, or whatever you call them in your CRM or your sales funnel, every single one of them has one fear. It's all universal. We all have it, and it's just common, another part of the human condition, and that's the fear of change. Right? If they didn't have a fear of change, or they accepted the risk, or they were okay with change, they would be a customer. And we've all had those customers, right? Those prospects where you talk to them the very first time and they're like, here's my situation. Here's my issue. I see what you do online. How much is this going to cost me? I have my credit card in my hand and I'm ready to go. When can we get started? Right? They've already accepted it. Either their current house is on fire and they know that anything is better than where they're at right now, or they just have accepted it and they're ready to go and they want it bad enough. And so you have to understand that everyone has one single fear, and that's a fear of change. And as humans, we love our comfort zone. And so what you're talking about is accurate and very valid that people forget, which is your one job is to help them feel safe enough to move out of their comfort zone, accept change, accept the risk that comes with change. And your job is to help them feel safe with that risk and mitigate it and offset as much as possible. That's why nobody gets fired for hiring, bringing in IBM or McKinsey or one of those, because that's a safe thing that everyone's going to agree with. And how could you go wrong? And if it doesn't work out, it's not my fault or their fault. It must be somebody else's fault, because they're mitigating that risk. Again, going back to the Amazon example, do you want to buy something on Amazon that has 0 reviews or 1 review, or 25,000 reviews, even if it's 4.5 stars, but that's a lot of people, right? Like, how do you offset that? And so you want to make your prospects feel safe. You actually have one job, and that's that help them feel safe enough to move forward.
From the human perspective, you have fear. What other emotions come out consistently that you have to either overcome or help move towards? So once again, so people be willing to actually make a decision.
Well, it all really stems from that. And then that's where the game of sales gets complex, because you have one job, which is to make people feel safe, which is an acronym that I created. It's successful at fear elimination, right? If you want to remember what your one job in sales, whatever it takes, however you have to do it, whatever your process is, however long it takes, you have one job, right? And if you're dealing B2B and it's complex, you have multiple holders involved. Everyone has to feel safe enough to move forward. Otherwise, it's just not going to work. And I come from a background and a main focus of long-term lifetime success for a client with a company. And so it's not just like a one-time transaction. I'm never going to see this person again, and I don't really care what happens to them. But like, their success is all that matters, and their long-term success and their lifetime value and their renewals or whatever that looks like, that's the most important thing. So it's really about setting them up for success. So the emotions that come out of that and what comes up in the transaction are going to be so different. Some people have had bad experiences with salespeople in the past or buying something. And so basically they have baggage, like getting into a relationship with someone who had a bad experience in the past. Like you're the next person, you're inheriting that baggage, because like that's a part of the thing. And so sometimes that's what comes up, right? Some people are nervous, scared. There's different personality types. If you understand DISC and those kind of things, then there's different ways that people see things, what they're afraid of, what their biggest fears are in themselves, not just with change, but like what drives them and motivates them, like promoter type people out. Like I use a different format than DISC, but something that's more of like a promoter person. They have a big fear of missing out. So a lot of their stuff is going to come from not wanting to miss out on what everyone else is doing. And so you're going to sell to them differently, and they're going to bring up different things. And so that's where it's difficult to say, all right, here's what you can expect. And then the other part, like taking it to another step, Carl, because I'm sure this is the next part, or this is usually where it comes up with, okay, but what about objections? And what about overcoming things like that? Like all of that is their fear popping up in some way, usually when things are getting real. Like when you're needing to move this transaction forward and it's about to get real, you'll find out what their baggage and underlying stuff is if you pay enough attention, because that's what will pop up. They'll be like, well, hold on. Before we do this, like X, Y, and Z, right? And then you have to overcome that and help them through that to help them feel safe enough. A lot of salespeople just gloss over it or throw a bunch of random stuff at somebody and hope that works. They don't actually get to the root cause or the issue leading to that, trigger for them.
It's fascinating. And I'm not sure how much people listen enough in the sales transaction when a potential customer is looking at buying your product or service and they say something. It's amazing how many times we actually don't listen to it because we're trying to overcome it, right? We don't actually hear what their concern is. And you brought it. So let's touch on that part first. How do you help salespeople, sales teams become better listeners, rather than just fighting to immediately do the objection that name your famous salesperson, right? And 100 ways to overcome objections. How do you help them to become, once again, human rather than a robot, which now can be copied through AI, right, of those automated responses?
Yeah, well, and it's interesting because semi going back to what you said about AI in the very like in the lead up to this conversation and then mentioning it right now, here's the big thing is that we have AI, we have technology, we have tools, we have a lot of things that make it so that we can help ourselves with whatever we need. Like literally right now as we're recording this, I could multitask real quick. I could order food to be delivered. By the time we're done, food's here. I never talk to somebody. I don't even leave the house. I don't need people anymore for so many things in my life, right? Again, going back to the human aspect, if I need to talk to you or I want to talk to you, then that's so important. And what's interesting is that with sales, especially complex sales, but just in general, salespeople think, oh, I'm going to be replaced by AI. If AI hasn't taken your job yet, it's not going to, because people still need you to be a human who cares about them and wants to help them with the right choice, right? Either that or the part that I hate personally is your company has set up a lead funnel where there's no way to actually self-service and they have to talk to you by filling out a form and then running through your gauntlet. And I promise that will piss off a lot of people. I know it pisses me off when I can't find the information I want to know if I want to talk to you. The only option is to talk to you from your form. I promise I won't. There's enough choice. Like I can pick anything else I want. So back to what you're talking about with like actually listening. There's so many things, but let's see if we could cover it in two. The first thing I tell everybody is the moment you will be a successful sales professional, which is another topic. We probably don't have enough time to talk about why sales is not actually a profession, but that's a different moment. The moment you become an actual sales professional, in my opinion, starts when you no longer have to think about what you're going to say next and you can actually just listen. When you're not thinking about the next question and the next step in your process, what you're going to do with this, when they're coming up with an objection, you're not thinking about what your response is because you trust yourself enough to know how to handle it. Like this, right? You and I are talking here. I don't have this planned or scripted. I've done this enough times where I know what I like to talk about. You could throw some crazy curveball question at me and we'll just rip and get through it, right? Like it's just conversing. So many people are focused on their agenda and what they have to do next, or they're just like running through this process, or they're desensitized to the process where they just forget to just listen and remember that that other person is a person that you should be focusing on. The second piece of advice, and this is really important because we can all say active listening, 2 ears, one mouth, listen twice as much as you talk. And that's like, it's in all the books as well. But here's the thing, and this cliche is so valuable as well. Like this drives home with a lot of salespeople right now also, is that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. I'll repeat it. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Super cliche, sounds super cheesy on the surface. Right now in 2024, it is the most important advice I could give anybody in sales. Because again, I don't need information. I need help. I need help from somebody who I know cares about me and my business or my situation enough to give me the right advice for me. Once I know you care about me, then I'll listen to your suggestions and where you think we should go. If I don't think you care about me and I only think you care about your quota, or where it is in the month or the quarter and what your agenda is or what your pressure is, I'm not listening to you. And I don't think I'm just alone. I think a lot of people, like if I don't feel like you care about me, I'm not listening. And if you're not listening to me, that tells me you don't care. And again, real quick, Carl, like I know I just talked for a lot, but here's the big thing. A lot of people are like, no, that's not how it works. And I know it's like, I promise, step back from your job as a salesperson. Look at your personal life. This is where the H to H is so dramatically important, is that we are all humans. So take a step back. When you clock out from your sales job and you're no longer in sales mode and you're back to being a human, in relationship with people, family, friends, whatever, significant other, when somebody doesn't listen to you and they only talk to you, but they don't listen, do you feel like they care or do you feel like they don't care? Right? Versus when somebody's actually asking you questions and they actually care about your day or what's going on in your life or this and that, and you share and they actually listen and they engage with you, it's a different feeling. And that's the part that so many people are missing. They clock in, they go into sales mode. Here's my job. I sell. That was my longish monologue on that. There you go.
Thank you. And what I loved about it was because we were talking about it, my holding myself back and restraint of not wanting to interrupt you. I was like on 10x mode. It's like, hold back, don't talk, listen. And you did nail something there, right? Which is, if I may ask, here you're talking cold outreach. Just let's go there. Cold outreach. You don't know that person. You don't know who that person is. You're trying to connect with them. Just, I know it's different for every business to some extent, but there's some principles here. How do you help show that you care once you've gotten the opportunity to actually start conversing? Or maybe we can start at the very beginning, cold outreach. How can you show you actually care at cold outreach?
So I don't like one size fits all advice, although I feel like I'm getting closer to that with a lot of the stuff that we talked about, which is the kind of advice I give everybody, no matter what their industry is, because we really are talking about humans. The one thing I find is so applicable, especially as salespeople get more and more desperate for that cold outreach to get somebody to actually reply or acknowledge their existence and then, fall into their sales pipeline. So the number one advice I give to people is, when in doubt, especially if it's not working, do the opposite of what you think a salesperson is supposed to do. Just do the opposite, right? Stop following up, stop checking in, stop, hey, sending the connection request that you do on LinkedIn, because we all get them. They're all standard. I feel like it's completely unrelated. Salespeople from every different industry are learning their own different ways, but for some reason, there's almost a universal sales training manual out there that I've never seen that teaches everyone to be a salesperson in their outreach, in their messages, in their emails, in their LinkedIn. I get them all. And I could almost line them all up across a wide range of industries. It's wild. It's wild what salespeople think they're supposed to do that companies are teaching them. That's almost universal. So when in doubt, do the opposite of what a salesperson would do, right? That's why I love my cold call script that I've gotten from other people and evolved, but I've heard this years and years and years ago, and I love it, is, hey, Carl, this is Jason from Cutter Consulting Group. Have you heard of us before? Roll with that, Carl.
No, never heard of you before, Jason. Why are you calling me right now?
Well, I guess that makes this a cold call. And if you could give me 35 and a half seconds, I'd love to find out just a little bit more about your business, explain what we do, and see if it even makes sense to talk further. Does that sound fair?
Yeah, sure. You got 35 seconds.
And 35 seconds go, right? And people are like, oh my God, what are you going to do? Just plan it out. We don't have time for that seminar right now, but that's such a pattern interrupt. To admit that this is a cold call and admit that if you just give me a minute or less, we'll see if this even makes sense. I don't know, Carl, if this makes sense or not. I don't know. You don't know me. I don't know you. I think I can help you, but I'm also not going to assume I need 8 minutes to see if I can help you. I'm also not going to waste your time. And I know you weren't expecting this. When you do what no one else is willing to do, and you do it as a pattern interrupt, it will throw people and be like, yeah, sure, why not, right? Instead of, hey, Carl, how are you today? Oh, this is Jason from, oh, yes, I was going on your website and I saw that you got, that's what everyone does. I don't know why that's the universal script to sound like a cheesy salesperson, but it is. And so how do you do something different that's authentic for you, that's your personality, but it's just real? How would you call a friend? How do you call a family member? What do you send to them, right? Obviously you want to be professional, but just be human, right? A human that wants to help somebody is the biggest thing you can try to do.
This is the timing of this couldn't be more perfect, because we are first time in our company. We've been fortunate. We're one of these companies that have been nearly all referral. It's gone fantastic. We've had great growth. We provide great service, but we do recognize, for us to get to the next level, we have to start selling. We actually have to go and connect with people we don't know and go down that path. And yes, we have our inbound. Don't get me wrong, right? We know we have referral, but we get inbound marketing that's bringing us leads, and we process those leads and do a good job. But for us to scale to the next level, we have to go towards that. So here I am. I'm the person that's responsible, right, for other people that are there. And I love the advice that you said right there, because we literally just this week started some of this process. And I am not a salesperson by nature, and I'm not used to having only 1.5% success. Okay, so let's start with that, right? I'm not used to that. So curious, even with all of these changing the script, and you're still going outbound, are we talking that's going to go from 1.5% to 2.5%? I mean, the reality is, they say, right, in a general market, only 1% of the world out there is looking potentially for something for you to buy. this is assuming you aren't selling underwear, right? If you're not selling something that's common or milk or something of that nature, but if you're selling something that isn't necessarily needed, but could be very helpful, right, for a business. I'd say in my case, it is needed if you don't want to lose millions of dollars, but that's a little side note. That just comes down to if you like losing millions of dollars, that's, whatever on that side behind it. What advice you'd get, here we are, Jason, we're talking about this and we're thinking of putting together our first real outreach the first time. We're actually selling different products and services from that. I love it of being cold, but there is this reality, right, that you're going to face failure on connecting with new people that you don't know.
So one part of what comes to mind as you're talking about this, some amazing advice I heard Joe Peachy, he coaches teams, trains teams in all industries, sometimes coaches consultants, like, small businesses. He still makes like 150 cold calls a day himself, just hand dialing. Like that's his thing. Like, some people go to the gym every day. Like that's his thing. And I heard him once in a meeting we were in last year. Somebody asked him, like, how many calls do you make a day? What's your goal? How do you deal with that? He's like, I'm not trying to sell anything. I make these calls. I'm trying to find buyers. I'm not trying to find people to sell to. I'm trying to find buyers. And I'll tell you, like, that is a huge mindset shift and focus. Like that landed with me so hard. Like there's a lot of things that that we all know, but we can't put words to it. His big thing is he's looking for buyers. And so let me go back to the example of the cold calling script that I love using the most is, hey, Carl, if you give me 35 seconds, I want to see if this is a good fit and if it's worth talking more. And you're like, no, I'm not interested. Okay, great. Like that's all I need to know. You're closed-minded. You don't want to talk. You're not a buyer. You're not open-minded. I'm okay with that. There's 8 billion people on the planet. I don't need you. Even what you're talking about, Carl, where there's 1% of the people, like, that's cool. I don't need you. Like, I'm going to keep going. I'm not going to take it personal. I'm not going to fight you. I'm not going to fight you on, no. Like, give me no. I just want to know. I want to know the people who say, yeah, that sounds good. Let me listen to this, right? I want open-minded buyers. Now, doesn't mean I'm an order taker and I'm looking for laydowns, but I need somebody who's open-minded. And this goes into the second part, which is what I've said for years, and I say from stage all the time to groups, especially of business leaders, is that the first step is always the hardest. Of the 12 steps, the first one's the hardest, which is admitting that you have a problem, right? Once you do that, guys like you and I and our teams and anybody else, then the magic happens, right? If you haven't admitted you have a problem and you think your business is amazing, and in your example and the stuff that you're telling me and you guys do and stuff that I do for businesses, like if you think that you know everything about sales and operations and business strategies and you don't think you could improve in one way because you're the smartest person in the room, keep on keeping on, right? If you know that you could do better or you want to do better, now we can talk, right? And so anybody in sales, you're really looking for that person who, you could do challenger sale, which is, or even Sandler sales, which is find someone who's healthy, make them feel sick, and then solve their sickness, right? Or you could find someone who's like, I think I could do something better. And then how do you do that at scale, especially in this day and age, right? With the internet and so many different options out there.
I love what you're saying. And once again, I think what you're talking about is, once again, so important, because you and I both know, right? AI has gotten smarter and smarter and smarter with outbound, right? Now when you're getting a lead, whether no matter what the source, they're already scraping information about you and saying, hey, Carl, I loved the podcast you were on recently with Jason, and that was amazing. And I am really looking forward to just good connect with you. Like that's their original lead. By the way, way more impressive than the silly ones that come across, or, oh, I just want to put you in my network. It's like, thank you. I appreciate that, which was like the old standard one that's been around. I think the common one from LinkedIn that's been there for years. But, it's how do you get people to stop, right? How do you create that stopping mechanism without embarrassing yourself, that you don't feel like you have to do, run around the room naked and show yourself on a Snapchat so you can actually get some leads. It's like, that's not the goal here, right? And plus be troublesome from it. I'm very glad there wasn't cameras when we were younger, just of note.
For sure.
So now let's go a little bit further. I love this concept of selling. You've gone through all of this and you go through training and people are starting to respond to you. I'm talking about salespeople, right? That you're working with in sales teams. But what do they object to next when you're talking with them? what's like the next big thing? They're like, Jason, this isn't going to work because I've been selling for 20 years.
Oh, those that I have mostly an observational bias. So the challenge is that when companies bring me in or I work with sales teams, they already have a culture of being open-minded, which is why they're talking to me in the first place. And usually company cultures are pretty persistent along everybody, right? I've worked with some teams where there's some top salespeople who think they know everything. And if we're in a virtual Zoom session, a training session, they don't have their camera on, their mic is muted, they never interact because they think they know everything. That's pretty rare. Most of the groups, like even people who have been selling for a long time, they're like, I didn't think about that. Or, I always set it up with like, there's people in this room who have forgotten more stuff than other people know that are starting out in sales. And that's cliche, but also true. And so, but the big thing that comes up next is, hey, this is the way I've always sold, and I explain it. And what's interesting is when I go through like the parts we've already talked about here, but in more detail with groups and with salespeople in particular, they understand it where there's really there's no barriers for them. They understand like, oh, I'm not telling you to sell different. I'm telling you to actually care about people and put them first and then talk about yourself second. Like that's the big thing. And then that usually does it. And then the other part of the conversation, which is what you were bringing up a few minutes ago, is all right, but how do I actually get a hold of people? Because no one ever calls me back and no one ever answers when I call them, right? Like that's then where it's like, okay, I got it. I now understand how I can be more effective. Now, how do I actually talk to people? Because no one's anywhere to be found.
That's good stuff. I appreciate going through that. And there's this reality, right? You have to learn to seek who needs you, and where you can provide value. And the reality is not everybody needs all things at all times, right? And just think about it in our, we might be busy today, but we won't be busy tomorrow, so to speak, right? There's times or seasons, right? Even the same person that weren't open at that moment because who knows what was going on. Like the last guest I was with, their home had a water pipe burst and their beautiful studio was gone and they were in a not a normal place, if that makes sense for the podcast. Things like that happen. They weren't ready to buy at that moment, right? Because of their outside circumstances that had nothing to do with whether they wanted your product or service. They weren't ready for you yet, but maybe they might get to be ready for you down the road if you still continue to connect and could provide value, at the end of the day for them that they can help go through this. So anyways, love that stuff. All right. So got a few of my common questions I love to ask. So these are my regulars that I do like to ask in the shows. So from a business perspective and perhaps as a business success with your clients, how are you measuring success?
For me, it's really about building scalable sales operations, but it's more so like my own mission statement, which then is personal, but then, also business, is to facilitate transformation in three ways. It's to spark light bulb moments, to help the underdog win their game, because I feel like a lifelong underdog, and then also to leave people better than I found them. And so for me, measure of success with any client, with any team, with any sales operation is really what can we put in place? How do I help them scale? How do I help them succeed? How do, even out the ups and downs and just make it, a better trajectory that's just less stressful, like with the ups and downs. And then how do I just spark those light bulbs where people are like, I never thought of that. I should do that. That's a better way to go. And then leave them in a place where they can do that.
That's good stuff. Okay, now personal side, you got a lot going on. I mean, you've got your business growing. You're going out and making a difference. You written several books which is very impressive. By the way, congratulations on doing that. Because my one that I did was hard enough on its own. I do plan to write more, but it's I'm not quite ready to turn that next page yet. What type of habits have you found yourself to do regularly so you can perform at your best?
The biggest thing for me, is two things. One is it can be very isolating to work alone. It can also be very isolating to work from home, which is the mode I've been in pre-COVID, but then post-COVID, a lot of people are in that mode. So one of the things I've found is to have a accountability partner in form of a power hour. I've had various people on it. I have one consistent friend, Oliver, who's on it, and we do it most mornings. Think of a power hour. He's my gym buddy, right? Like he messages, says, hey, are you going to be there at 8? You're going to be there at 9 a.m. And then we get in Zoom. We talk about what we're going to do. We set some, intention. I play some music that is, going through Zoom. We mute ourselves and then we just work. And it starts off the day instead of like, what am I going to do? And I'm floating around. Like, I know, and I could not show up, but like, it's just like having that gym buddy who you know is going to be at the gym and they're looking for you. And so what can you do to set it up? No matter if you're by yourself. Again, we've had salespeople from teams, like other companies, join the Power Hour because they're like, this is cool. Like, we don't do anything. Like, I just want to be around people who are working, and then let's just work, right? Everyone's making phone calls, we're writing stuff, whatever. And so that's been really helpful because that help bridges that gap from being, home alone, working in isolation, and some ideas come up, which is really cool. So I really recommend that for everybody. The other thing, and I'll tell you, recently, one of the big shifts is realizing you can't control your task list. You can't control your time. You can't do any of that. I heard some great advice from a guest on a Tim Ferriss podcast recently, where what I'm doing now is using my calendar as my task list. So I put all my tasks in my calendar as time blocks for when I'm going to do that project, that task thing for a client in general, when I'm going to answer this one email, not open my emails, but like deal with that email, snooze it to that point. And then now I know I'm going to do that. Tuesday, I'm working on this. Wednesday, I'm going to get to that. Thursday, I'm going to write this blog article in the morning. And then now it's out of my head. I'm not feeling like, oh, I'm not doing enough. And when am I going to do that? And it closes these open loops. That has been truly a game changer because I love my to-do list, but I'll look through my list and then cherry pick the stuff I want to do versus, all right, I know Monday afternoon, I'm going to work on X. And so I don't have to worry about it till then. And I can do other stuff right now that's more urgent.
Yeah, that time blocking, I'm a massive fan of that. I've been doing that for years. And it's not that it's even my direct normal training things, but when people say they don't have time to do strategic projects, I was like, have you ever considered starting your day without opening your email? And then your project is going to be whatever project you're working on. Complete game changer, right? Because when we go into email, as we both know, it can suck the life out of us, right? And all of a sudden we're just following tasks that we didn't even necessarily create. And we're not doing what we were paid to do in many cases, right? We're just doing stuff.
No. And the biggest you can do, and I challenge everyone to do this, and some people freak out because there's two kinds of people in the world, but I recommend always being at inbox 0 as much as possible. And that might freak people out because, again, there's two kinds of people in the world. Ones that are okay with no unread emails, and ones where you go into there, you look at their email, and it's like 17,000 unread emails. It's like, what are you doing? Like, that's so stressful. I won't get into it, but that's so stressful for the primal parts of our brain that are always looking for danger and opportunity. Like, you're going to melt down. And so, especially if you have G Suite, snooze emails, look at them. What's urgent? What's important? Triage it like you're an ER doctor. What do I need to do now? What do I need to do? What's my next time? I'll do this at 2:00. Snooze them all till 2:00. Then you look at your inbox. You're like, I'm at 0. And then when, like me, I can't, people say, well, don't check your inbox for the next 3 hours. Like, I don't have that control, right? I'm a pretty controlled person. I can't not reflex and have that OCD where I want to check it because there might be something there. But then it's at 0, or I just snooze more stuff. And then I feel satisfied and I can get back to work. So use that instead of trying to fight your human side at what you're trying to do.
Jason, I love these things you brought up because I'm a 0 inbox guy as much as possible. It's funny. I have a few people that manage my account, and thank you, Tanya, who's my director of operations, who does a lot of it. Thank you. She has really survived a lot of stress. But even before then, I had it for years, way before I ever had assistants or people or directors help me out with things. Because once again, it does remove stress. And it's interesting. I actually have one email inbox that we use for our accounting stuff, ironically, of all things. And it's the one of the few I don't filter out. And it's like, I see it's like 14,572 emails. And I'm like, one of these days I just have to archive all of it and, go into it. But
mark all as read. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. But it is a really powerful tool. And by the way, those who are kind of curious, Getting Things Done, a book by David Allen, highlights a lot of these things that Jason's bringing up. It's really good stuff to help free you of what I call the insanity of what we've created. And I'm not even talking about whether you have social apps like on your phone, but we don't have time to go on all of that today. Speaking of books, and not one of your own, Jason, actually, before we go to that, how are you now measuring success in your personal life?
In my personal life, success for me is really that balance of work and non-work. It's being able to relax. Some of it is just always thinking about business. Some of it's always wondering and or worrying about where the next thing is going to come from. But success to me is really being able to turn that off and step away, right? Like when we're done today, I'm done for the day, and then I'm just going to be done. And like being able to be present with other people, with my wife, and just be able to hang out and do fun stuff and not stress about it or think about it. To me, that's That's a success, just being able to have those two different modes. So it's not all right or nothing.
Yeah, good for you. All right. So speaking of books, and I know you've mentioned a few throughout this podcast today, but what is a book that really has inspired you that everyone who's listening today should be reading?
I'm going to say this one, which is very timely. I mean, I have trouble recommending sales books because everyone's selling different. They have different personalities. You could, maybe this book versus this one, but like it's going to resonate with you depending on where you are in your career, what you sell, what your personality is, right? Like, some hardcore sales books, like if that's not your mode, it's not going to feel right. And then you're, again, going back to the authentic persuasion, then you're going to try to be something you're not, and it's not going to work. But I will tell you, the one book I recommend so much right now to everyone in sales, everyone in marketing, everyone in leadership, everyone running a business where it feels like it's so hard to get a hold of anybody, and it feels like sales is so much harder as a grind, not the conversations, but the pipeline development and the grind. Sales Innovation Paradox by Dr. Howard Dover. The Sales Innovation Paradox by Dr. Howard Dover. Get it, read it. I read it in one day on a Saturday, confirmed everything that I felt was wrong with sales, and blew my mind about, what the cause of it was. It's basically going to tell you, whoever you are, that when you read this, it's going to tell you why it seems so hard to be in sales now versus even just a few years ago. And again, it's partly the human, but this is where the technology really comes into play. And it's not your technology, it's the prospect's technology. That's the problem.
Great stuff. Jason, how can people connect and learn more about what you're doing?
Couple easy things. One, the website is sellingeffectiveness.com. So go there, find all kinds of resources, salespeople, managers, sales ops leaders. The books, the podcasts are all on there, videos. I do a lot of stuff on LinkedIn, so you can find me on LinkedIn. You can find YouTube channel, got a lot of videos on there. You can email me directly, jason@sellingeffectiveness.com, or even jason@cutterconsultinggroup.com. And then the fun one, if you can't remember all that, or if you're driving or wherever you're at, wherever you're watching, listening to this, I'm the #1 ranked Jason Cutter on Google. So when in doubt, just Google me and you'll find pages and pages of ways to go at my content.
And by the way, a sales tip for those who are listening, that's one of the best ways is to ask people to Google you rather than other things. That's a great way.
And they will anyway. So be prepared. You better be on top of your game, because everyone's going to look you up before they talk to you or after they talk to you for the first time.
And that's why, interestingly enough, I don't have it on here, but Carl J. Cox I go by because there's a DJ, Carl Cox, who crushes me. And he's been around for 30 years. And so it's Carl J. Cox, anybody who's listening to that. So Jason, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you on the Measure Success podcast today.
Thanks for having me, Carl. Again, like I knew it. We were going to have fun and definitely run out of time of all the stuff that we could talk about.
And to everyone else who's listening, I hope you've enjoyed Jason's insights into how to sell in today's day. It's despite everything that's happened with AI and despite all the technology, they're still human on the other end that's buying your products or services and learning how to be human. I think Jason shows today is super powerful. As we always like to say, wishing you the very best at measuring your success. Have a great day.
Thanks for listening to the Measure Success podcast. We'll see you again next time to learn from the best. Remember to subscribe now to get future episodes.